My mother-in-law told everyone my child was not really mine because I used IVF and then tried to publicly expose me at a family gathering until I finally snapped. My mother-in-law started telling people my child was not really mine because I used IVF, then she tried to publicly expose me at a family gathering like she was doing a service announcement, and I snapped in a way I did not recognize in myself, because it finally hit me that she was not just being rude, she was trying to separate me from my own child in everyone's mind. I am Omi, I am in my early 30s, married to my husband, Kieran, and we have a baby who is still small enough that my whole day is basically feeding schedules and nap windows and trying to keep a tiny person calm while my brain runs on fumes. Kieran and I did IVF after years of infertility, and I am not going to do medical details, but it was expensive, it was draining, it was a lot of appointments and waiting and hoping and then bracing for disappointment, and when it finally worked I felt like I could breathe for the first time in a long time. Kieran's mother, Sayana, knew we were doing IVF, because we made the mistake of thinking honesty would make her supportive. She acted supportive at first, she did the whole sweet voice thing, told me I was brave, told me science is amazing, told me she was praying for us, and I believed it because I wanted to. Then the comments started, and they were always wrapped in that fake concern packaging. She would ask if I was sure the clinic used my egg. She would ask if I knew how often mistakes happen. She would ask if we did extra testing. She would say it like she was just curious, just protective of Kieran, but her eyes would always land on me like I was a suspect. At first I tried to laugh it off, because I was so used to people saying awkward things about IVF, like they think they are being helpful when they are actually stepping on your ribcage. So I would redirect. I would say everything was handled properly. I would say the clinic has protocols. I would say our baby is our baby. Sayana would smile and nod, and then later she would make another comment, same theme, different words, always pointing at doubt. Kieran was the worst kind of supportive in this, supportive privately, passive publicly. He would hold my hand in the car after visits and tell me he is sorry she is like that. He would tell me he would talk to her. Then the next time we saw her he would act like he did not hear the comment, because he hates conflict with her, and Sayana knows it. When the baby was born, Sayana showed up at the hospital and stared at the baby's face like she was looking for a stamp. She kept saying the baby looked nothing like Kieran, which is already a gross thing to say to new parents. Then she started asking if the baby had my family's traits, like she was building a case file out loud. I was exhausted and emotional and I did not want to fight in a hospital room, so I kept it polite and short and I let Kieran manage her, except he did not manage her. He just made those nervous little jokes that do nothing. After we got home, the comments moved outward, not just to us, to other people, and I found out because Kieran's aunt, a woman named Morel, pulled me aside at a toddler play gym we sometimes use for open floor time, not a park, not a coffee shop, a padded indoor place where parents sit on benches and watch kids crawl and tumble. Morel looked uncomfortable and told me Sayana had been saying strange things. She said Sayana told her she did not feel connected to the baby because the baby was not really ours. I asked Morel what that meant, and Morel hesitated, then told me Sayana was saying IVF babies are not the same, that they are basically lab babies, and that the woman who gives birth is not always the real mother, and hearing that made my stomach drop, because it was not just rude, it was an attempt to erase me. I asked if she said it to anyone else, and Morel told me yes. Sayana had been hinting at it to multiple relatives, framing it as concern for Kieran, like she was the brave truth teller protecting her son from being trapped into raising someone else's child. That night I confronted Kieran, not yelling, but shaking, because I could feel my body going into that fight mode, and I told him his mother was telling people I am not our baby's real mother, and Kieran looked stunned at first, then he looked guilty, because he had heard pieces of it and minimized it, and I asked him why he did not shut it down, and he told me he did not think she would go that far. He told me she was just emotional, and I remember staring at him and thinking, she already went that far, she is currently there. Kieran promised again he would talk to her, and he did, sort of. He called her and later told me he reminded her to be respectful, which is meaningless, because Sayana does not respond to reminders, she responds to consequences. Then the family gathering got announced, and this is where everything escalated. Kieran's family has this big seasonal gathering at his cousin's renovated barn venue. It is not a restaurant, it is a private family property that they use for events, big open space, string lights, long tables, a little stage area where people make announcements, and it is the kind of place where you cannot hide in a corner because everyone circulates. Sayana was obsessed with having us bring the baby. She kept saying the family needed to meet the baby properly. She kept saying she wanted a family photo with all generations, and she kept saying it with this bright smile that made my skin crawl, because by then I knew she was building towards something. I told Kieran I did not want to go, and he begged. He said it would look bad if we skipped. He said his mom would calm down. He said we could leave early, and I agreed because I was still clinging to the idea that he would handle her if she crossed a line in public. We arrived, the barn venue was packed, the air smelled like dust and old wood, people were hugging, passing plates, showing each other baby photos on phones, and I was trying to keep my own baby calm in a carrier while pretending I was not bracing for impact. Sayana greeted us too enthusiastically. She grabbed at the baby carrier straps like she wanted to take the baby immediately, and I stepped back and kept the baby close, and I watched her smile tighten, because she hates not getting what she wants. At first it was fine, awkward but fine, then I noticed Sayana moving through the room in a pattern, stopping to talk to groups, glancing toward me, then moving again, like she was setting up her audience. About an hour in, Kieran's uncle clinked a glass and announced they were doing family announcements and a photo, and my stomach dropped, because I knew this was the moment Sayana wanted. People gathered near the stage area, someone set up a camera tripod, relatives started lining up, and Sayana positioned herself right next to Kieran like she was his representative. Then she asked for the microphone, not in a casual way, in a determined way, and people handed it to her because she is that person in the family, the matriarch who acts like she has authority. Sayana started talking about miracles and family legacy and the blessing of children, and I could feel my skin prickling, because her voice was too sweet, too practiced, and she kept looking around like she was making sure everyone was listening. Then she said she wanted to share something important for the sake of honesty, and I felt my throat tighten, because that phrase, honesty, was her weapon. She started talking about IVF like it was a secret scandal. She told everyone we had the baby through a clinic. She said the family deserved transparency. She said there are risks. She said there are cases where babies are switched. She said it happens. And she said she had been worried because the baby did not resemble Kieran. And she said she did not think it was right for Kieran to be trapped raising a child who might not be genetically his. I remember standing there holding the baby carrier handle, feeling my ears ring, because she was saying it out loud in front of everyone. She was doing the thing she had been hinting at, but now she was turning it into a public accusation. People started murmuring, heads turning. Someone looked at me with that uncomfortable curiosity people get when they think they are watching a scandal. Kieran froze, like his brain shut down, and that is when I snapped, because the image of him freezing while his mother questioned my child's legitimacy in public felt like my whole life finally made sense in the worst way. I stepped forward, and I did not shout profanity or anything like that, but my voice came out sharp and loud, and I told Sayana she was lying. I told her IVF does not mean the baby is not mine. I told her my body carried this baby, my heart carried this baby, and that even if she wanted to reduce motherhood to genetics, the embryo transfer and pregnancy were mine, the birth was mine, the nights and the feedings were mine, and I told her she does not get to rewrite that because she wants control. I told her she is not protecting Kieran, she is trying to humiliate me and separate me from my own child in the family's eyes, and I told her if she ever questioned my child's legitimacy again, she would not see us again. Sayana stared at me like she could not believe I spoke back, then she did what she always does, she played victim. She said she was only asking questions, she said she was only concerned, she said I was overreacting, and I looked around the room and saw people waiting to see if Kieran would finally do something. Kieran's face went red, and he finally took the microphone from Sayana's hand, not gently, just firmly, and he told everyone his mother was wrong, that our child is ours, and that IVF is a medical process, not a character flaw, and he told everyone the family gathering was not the place for his mother's accusations, and then he told Sayana she needed to leave. The room went dead quiet, because nobody expects the quiet son to draw a hard line in public, and Sayana's mouth fell open. Then she started crying, loud, saying I was turning her son against her, saying I was stealing her grandchild, saying she deserved answers, and Kieran told her she already had answers, she just did not like them. We left before the family photo. We walked out past the tables while people stared, and I could feel my cheeks burning, not from guilt, but from the shame of being exposed in a moment that was supposed to be family, and in the car I started shaking so hard I could barely buckle my seatbelt. On the drive home, Kieran kept saying he was sorry, he kept saying he did not realize she would do it publicly, and I told him I did realize, and that is the difference between us. I have been seeing her for who she is, and he keeps insisting she is a softer version because it is easier for him. Now Sayana is telling people I had a breakdown at the gathering, she is telling people I attacked her, she is telling people I am unstable, and Kieran's relatives are split between those who think she crossed a line and those who think she had a right to ask, and I am sitting here with my baby asleep in the next room, wondering how you ever feel safe again when someone tries to take your motherhood away with words. Update 2 weeks later. 2 weeks later, I am more tired than I thought a person could be, because the gathering did not end the problem, it just moved it into a new form, and Sayana's new form is quieter but more dangerous, because now she is trying to look reasonable while still pushing the same accusation. The first thing that happened after we left the barn was Sayana calling Kieran repeatedly. He did not answer at first, then he answered once because he thought maybe she would apologize, and I watched his face while he listened, his shoulders tightened, his jaw clenched, and when he hung up he told me she said she was hurt, she said I embarrassed her, she said she was worried about her son, and she said she wanted proof. Not reassurance, not conversation, proof, like our baby is a disputed transaction. Karen told her no. And then Sayana shifted tactics, she started calling other people, she called Morel, she called Karen's cousin who hosted the event, she called Karen's older sister, and she started telling them she was being kept from her grandchild because she asked a reasonable question. That is the thing about Sayana, she does not argue the actual accusation directly once it backfires, she argues the framing, she wants to make it about my reaction, not her attack. Then my phone started getting messages, not direct harassment, but those weird indirect texts from relatives you barely know, people asking if everything is okay, people saying they heard there was drama, people hinting that a simple test could clear things up, and I could feel my stomach clench every time, because they were repeating her logic, that my motherhood is something I should have to prove to make other people comfortable. Karen's sister, Eloan, asked to meet, not at a restaurant, not a coffee shop, she asked if she could come to the Municipal Botanical Conservatory where she volunteers, because she could talk while she watered plants in the greenhouse wing, which sounds odd but it is her comfort place and she likes to keep her hands busy. I agreed because I needed someone in that family to be a real person, not a flying messenger, and I also wanted to hear directly where the family stood. Eloan met me near the conservatory entrance, she looked exhausted already, and she told me she was sorry, she told me their mother had been spiraling for years, and she told me she did not agree with the IVF comments, but she was worried about what their mother would do next, because when Sayana feels powerless, she looks for leverage. Eloan then told me something that made my skin go cold, she said their mother had been talking about grandparent rights, not in a legal detailed way, more like a threat she heard on television once and decided she could use, and she was telling people she might pursue visitation because she believes I am alienating her from the baby. Hearing that made my chest tighten, because it meant Sayana was not just trying to be offensive, she was trying to create a paper trail where she could claim I am unstable and she is the concerned grandmother being cut off. I asked Eloan if she thought Sayana would actually do something, and Eloan said she did not know, but she said their mother had been asking for copies of photos, asking for records of visits, asking who the pediatrician is, like she was gathering documentation, and that is when it clicked for me, Sayana is not just gossiping, she is preparing. At home, Kieran tried to minimize it again, he said his mother would never take us to court, and I told him his mother already took me to court in public, she just used a microphone instead of a judge, and I told him he does not get to decide what she is capable of anymore, because he has been wrong repeatedly. Kieran finally agreed to do something concrete, we sent a written message through his cousin who hosted the barn event, because the cousin is the family coordinator type, and we stated clear boundaries, no more discussion of IVF, no more questioning of parentage or motherhood, no public comments about our child, and any contact will be through Kieran only, not directly to me. Sayana responded by ignoring the boundaries and showing up at our pediatric clinic. We did not know until the clinic called us. The receptionist asked if Sayana was authorized to receive information, because she had come in saying she was the grandmother and needed to confirm the baby's medical history, and the receptionist said she could not release information without consent, and Sayana apparently became upset and insisted she had rights. The clinic flagged it as inappropriate and called us, and I felt my whole body go cold again, because Sayana was now crossing into systems, not just family gatherings. She was trying to insert herself into our child's records like she owns them. We went to the clinic the next day and signed paperwork restricting information release, and we made sure only our names were on file for pickup and records, and the clinic manager told us they would note that Sayana is not authorized and staff should not engage beyond basic refusal. That same week, Sayana started telling people the clinic was hiding things, that we were secretive, that secrecy means guilt, and it was like she had built a loop where any boundary becomes evidence against us. Then came the demand that made me realize she was going to keep escalating until someone forced a stop. She demanded a DNA test, not just for Kieran, but for me, because she claimed IVF could mean the baby is not genetically related to me, and I felt this rage rise in my chest so fast I had to sit down, because this woman was trying to erase pregnancy itself, like my body was just an incubator and not a mother. Kieran told her no, again, and Sayana responded by going to the family again and telling them Kieran is being controlled by me, and some relatives started believing her because it is easier to believe the daughter-in-law is manipulating than to believe their matriarch is cruel. The next escalation hit me at work, because small towns have no boundaries. I work at a public services office where people come in to do paperwork and licensing, and someone I recognized as one of Kieran's distant cousins came to my counter for a permit, and while I was processing it, she leaned in and quietly asked if the baby was really mine, like she was asking about a recipe, and my hands went numb, because she said it so casually. I kept my face neutral, I finished her paperwork, and I told her my family is not appropriate conversation at my workplace, and she smiled like I was being sensitive, then she walked away. After that, I went into the supply room and shook, because it meant the rumor had left the family and entered the town, and once a rumor enters the town, you cannot control who repeats it. Kieran and I decided we had to address it directly in a way that did not become a public spectacle again, and we chose one controlled setting. We invited the key relatives to a meeting at the Volunteer Fire Hall community room during a weekday afternoon, because it is a neutral public building with staff present and it is not a family home, and we did not invite Sayana. The meeting was awkward. Kieran spoke first. He explained IVF, not in medical detail, but enough to shut down the ignorance. He told them our child is ours and that any claim otherwise is harassment, and he told them his mother was not entitled to proof, and that anyone repeating her rumor would not have access to us or the baby. Some relatives looked shocked, some looked defensive. One aunt tried to say Sayana is just old-fashioned, and I asked her, calmly, if she would call it old-fashioned if someone told her she was not her own child's mother, and the room went quiet, because they did not want to answer that. After that meeting, a few relatives backed off, but Sayana did not. She found out about the meeting and she lost it. She left a voicemail on Kieran's phone saying she would expose the truth herself. She said she would bring documents. She said she would show everyone what we are hiding. And I realized she was now in full obsession mode, and obsession does not end politely. Final update 4 months later. 4 months later, the situation is resolved, but not in a warm healing way, in a firm boundary and consequences way, because Sayana forced us into making choices we did not want to make. After the fire hall meeting, Sayana attempted to create her own public moment again. She tried to use a different family event, a memorial gathering for an older relative held at a local historical society hall, a place with exhibits and quiet rules, and she showed up early and started pulling people aside, telling them she had proof about the baby and that she would not let the family be fooled. Kieran's cousin who coordinated the event contacted Kieran before we arrived, warning us Sayana was acting like she planned to make a scene, and Kieran made the decision we should not attend, because the memorial was not about us and we were not going to let Sayana turn it into a circus. Sayana then used our absence as evidence. She told people we skipped because we are guilty, and the rumor machine spun again, but this time something shifted, because people had already seen her behavior at the barn gathering, and now they were seeing her hijack a memorial too, and even relatives who like gossip started looking uncomfortable, because there is a line in most families, and she crossed it. The biggest turning point was Aloan stepping in, not as emotional support for me, but as a barrier to her mother. Aloan requested a formal meeting with a community mediator who works with family conflicts, not therapy, not counseling, a mediator who helps set written agreements about contact and behavior, and Aloan did it because she was tired of her mother turning everyone into pawns. Aloan invited me and Kieran, and she invited Sayana, and she held it at a municipal conflict resolution center office, a place that looks like any other administrative office, plain chairs, water pitcher, a clock on the wall. Sayana walked in acting offended. She sat down and immediately started listing grievances, that I turned her son against her, that IVF is unnatural, that she deserves proof, that she is being punished for caring, and she kept saying the word deserve like it was a legal term. The mediator asked Sayana directly what outcome she wanted, and Sayana said she wanted access to the baby and she wanted the family to acknowledge she was right to question, and she wanted a DNA test, and she said it like that was a reasonable list. Kieran told her no again, and this time he did not soften it. He told her she does not get access to our child while she is actively telling people the child is not really mine, and he told her that continuing to spread the rumor would end contact entirely, not temporarily, entirely. Sayana tried crying, then tried rage, then tried the calm victim tone, and the mediator kept redirecting to behavior and boundaries, and in that setting, with a neutral professional, Sayana could not dominate the room the way she dominates family gatherings. The mediator asked Sayana if she would agree to stop making statements about the child's parentage and stop discussing IVF publicly, and Sayana refused. She said she would not be silenced, and Aloan finally snapped, not at me, at her mother. Aloan told her she was ruining her own relationship with everyone by being obsessed with control, and Sayana turned on Aloan immediately, accusing her of betrayal. That meeting ended with the mediator documenting that Sayana refused basic boundaries, which sounds small, but it mattered, because it created a neutral record of her refusal and her intent to continue. After that, Kieran and I took the next step. We sent a formal written no-contact notice, not a long email chain, not a dramatic letter with insults, a short notice stating Sayana is not to contact us, not to come to our home, not to attempt access through third parties, and not to approach our child's school or medical providers, and we sent it through a process server because we wanted proof of delivery. Sayana reacted by showing up at the pediatric clinic again, this time with a folder, insisting she had documentation proving I am not the mother, and the clinic called security and called us, and the clinic manager told us they were willing to provide a written incident log if needed, because Sayana's behavior was now harassment. We used that incident log along with the mediator documentation and the prior voicemail where she threatened to expose us, and we petitioned the court for a protective order, not because we wanted drama, but because Sayana would not stop inserting herself into our child's world. The court granted a limited order restricting contact and prohibiting her from approaching the child's medical providers and childcare settings, and once there was an order, relatives who had been waffling suddenly stopped repeating her rumor, because people will gossip when it is social, but they stop when it is documented and serious. Sayana tried one last public move at a different family gathering, a small engagement celebration held at a rented community art studio space, and she was asked to leave at the door by the studio manager because her name was given in advance as not permitted, and for the first time, her power did not work in a room, she had to stand outside in the hallway hearing laughter she could not control. After that, the town rumor mostly died, not because people suddenly became enlightened, but because Sayana could not keep feeding it without consequences, and also because Kieran finally changed. He stopped treating his mother's behavior like weather, he started treating it like a choice with a result. We did not do a big reconciliation, we did not do a grand speech about forgiveness, we did not do a perfect family reset. We did one practical thing that made me feel safe again. Kieran and I updated our contact permissions and guardianship paperwork so that if anything happened to either of us, Sayana would have no automatic access, no assumed authority, nothing that could let her step in during a crisis and claim she is the rightful decision maker. The last contact from Sayana was through a relative who tried to pass a message, saying Sayana misses the baby and she is willing to move forward if we apologize for humiliating her, and Kieran told that relative no, and he told them to stop carrying messages, and he said if they continued, they would be cut off too. The final moment that made it feel finished was a routine check-in call from the pediatric clinic confirming they updated the file as requested and that staff were aware of the restricted person order, and when I hung up, I looked at my child playing on the floor, and for the first time in months, my shoulders dropped, because I knew there were systems in place that did not depend on Sayana's mood.